All right, let's jump right in. Today's deep dive takes us into top global news today.
Oh, interesting.
It's a collection of impactful events, stuff happening all around the world, from plane crashes to political shakeups, forced evacuations, even a bit of good news from NASA, believe it or not.
Wow, that sounds like a lot to cover.
It really is, and it's all happening right now. So, are you ready to get started?
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
Great. So first up, let's talk about that plane crash in Kazakhstan.
Okay.
An Azerbaijan Airlines flight went down, and the airline is putting the blame on, get this, external interference.
External interference. That's a chillingly vague phrase. What could it even mean?
Yeah, it does make you think, doesn't it? I mean, was it a technical malfunction, a cyber attack maybe, or could it be, something a bit more deliberate?
I mean, it does sound like something out of a spy thriller. What evidence points to each possibility?
Right, it's like we're missing pieces of the puzzle trying to figure out what really happened. And to make things even more mysterious, the head of Russia's Civil Aviation Agency said the situation at the plane's destination, which was Grozny, by the way, was, quote, very complicated. What was going on there? Political unrest, maybe?
Yeah.
Or some kind of security threat?
We need more information from the investigation to really get a clearer picture. But amidst all the speculation, it's important to remember that there were people on board.
Oh, absolutely.
We've seen those images of survivors being pulled from the wreckage, and it really is a sobering reminder of how precious and how fragile life can be.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's a heavy thought. And speaking of fragility, let's move on to South Korea's political landscape. They just impeached their second president in 2 weeks.
Oh, wow. 2 in 2 weeks.
First, it was President Yoon, and now acting President Han Duck-soo is out too. Have you ever heard of something like this happening before? 2 impeachments in such a short period of time.
It is highly unusual to see a political system in such upheaval so quickly. I mean, with this level of instability, it really suggests deep divisions within South Korea.
Right. It makes you wonder what's going on beneath the surface.
Yes.
What's driving this political turmoil, and what could it mean for South Korea's future?
Well, it's really difficult to predict the long-term consequences.
Yeah.
But this level of turmoil could have significant ripple effects, leading to things like policy paralysis or economic uncertainty or even social unrest. And remember, South Korea is a key player in East Asia, both economically and strategically.
Right, so any instability there is bound to be felt by its neighbors and potentially even globally.
Exactly.
Kind of like a domino effect.
Yeah.
One event triggers a whole cascade of consequences. And speaking of events with far-reaching implications, we have to talk about the forced evacuation of Kamal Adwan Hospital in Gaza by Israeli troops.
Yeah.
This story just demands attention. They even removed ICU patients, people on life support.
Oh, that's awful. This action has sparked widespread condemnation from the international community. And rightfully so, I have to say.
It's a deeply unsettling situation, and honestly, it feels like we're seeing a lot of lines being crossed lately.
It makes you question where we, as a global community, are headed.
Yeah, it really does. But you know what? Let's shift gears for a moment and talk about something a bit more hopeful.
Okay.
NASA's Parker Solar Probe just achieved the closest ever approach to the sun.
Wow, that's incredible.
It got closer than Mercury. It's an amazing feat of engineering and science.
It really is pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible in space exploration. This mission could revolutionize our understanding of the sun, potentially leading to breakthroughs in solar energy, space weather forecasting, and even our understanding of the origins of the universe.
It is kind of terrifying, though, isn't it, to think about getting that close to such a powerful force?
I know. It does make you think about potential downsides, doesn't it?
Yeah. Right. Are there any risks we haven't considered? What are the unforeseen consequences of getting this close to the sun?
It's true. It is like venturing into uncharted territory.
Totally.
With both incredible potential and, maybe some unknown dangers.
Exactly. Speaking of risks, this next story from China is a stark reminder that sometimes those risks, they come from within. A driver intentionally killed dozens of people in a car attack.
Oh, God.
Seemingly motivated by revenge for, of all things, a bad divorce settlement.
Wow. That's terrible.
It's a tragedy that raises all sorts of complex questions about human nature.
It certainly does.
And the limits of our legal systems. It brings up that age-old debate about the death penalty, too, which, by the way, he has been sentenced to.
Oh, really?
Is it ever justified? Does it deter crime? And in this case, the driver, he claimed he was driven by revenge. So Does that make his actions more understandable?
I don't know.
Excusable, even.
It adds a layer of moral ambiguity that's difficult to grapple with.
It really does, and it makes you wonder about the role of emotions in driving such extreme behavior. What can we do to prevent these tragedies from happening? But before we get too deep into that, I think we need to turn our attention to some of the other stories that are making headlines.
Yeah, it's a sad reminder that even with all this global connectivity, there are still people who feel isolated and desperate enough to take such drastic measures.
It really is, and it feels like each story we discuss connects to a larger, more complex narrative. Take that Italian reporter arrested in Iran, for instance.
Oh, right.
Nobody seems to know why he was detained. This feels like it goes beyond a single arrest, don't you think?
Well, it certainly raises concerns about press freedom in Iran.
Yeah.
And the lengths to which authorities might go to silence dissenting voices. It's a tough reminder that journalists often face incredible risks, especially when they're working in countries with, well, restrictive regimes.
It's a stark reminder that freedom of the press, it's not a universal right. And some people are putting themselves in harm's way just to report the truth. And then there's the tragic news of that migrant boat sinking off the coast of Morocco.
Oh, yes.
Dozens of lives lost. And these aren't just statistics, you know? These are real people seeking a better life, taking desperate measures.
That's a heartbreaking situation. And it really highlights the urgent need for humane and effective migration policies.
It's a reminder that these aren't just, abstract global issues we're talking about. These are stories about real people. It can be overwhelming sometimes to see so much suffering and injustice in the world.
It can be.
Yeah.
It really can, but we can't give in to despair. We have to remember that we're not powerless. By staying informed, staying engaged, advocating for change,
Right.
we can contribute to a more just and compassionate world.
Absolutely. Speaking of actions having global consequences, Estonia is ramping up its naval security after a suspected act of sabotage against an undersea power link.
That's interesting.
Given everything else that's happening, you can't help but wonder if this incident is somehow connected.
Well, this could be linked to the broader geopolitical tensions, especially considering the conflict in Ukraine and the strained relationship between NATO and Russia. It's a good reminder that even seemingly isolated incidents can have wide-ranging implications, especially in today's interconnected world.
It's like we're all playing a massive game of chess, and every move has unpredictable consequences, and sometimes those consequences can be devastating, as we see in Yemen. The WHO chief had to cancel a crucial trip there
I heard about that.
after an Israeli airstrike hit a hospital. It's hard to imagine the level of desperation and danger in a place where even humanitarian aid missions are at risk.
It really highlights the devastating impact of this conflict and the immense challenges that organizations like the WHO face when they're just trying to provide aid in such a volatile environment.
It makes you appreciate the courage of those aid workers,
Oh, absolutely.
risking their own lives to help others. It's a stark contrast to that story we talked about earlier, the driver in China who intentionally caused so much harm.
Yeah, it really does bring us back to those fundamental questions about human nature.
Right.
What drives someone to inflict such pain? How do we balance justice with compassion and punishment with, rehabilitation?
There are no easy answers, are there?
I don't think so.
But speaking of China, their project to build the world's largest hydropower dam in Tibet presents a different kind of ethical dilemma, wouldn't you say?
Yes, definitely.
They say it's a clean energy solution, but at what cost?
Well, this project has sparked a lot of debate, mainly because of its potential impact on the environment and surrounding communities. While it's true that the dam could provide a significant amount of clean energy, there are concerns about potential displacement of people, disruption of ecosystems, and changes to the water flow downstream in places like India and Bangladesh.
It's a perfect example of how even well-intentioned projects can have unintended consequences. Are we too focused on short-term gains at the expense of long-term sustainability?
That's a question we should be asking ourselves more often, that's for sure. True progress requires a more holistic view, a way of thinking that considers both people and the planet. Not just now, but in the future, too.
Yeah, it's about striking that balance between meeting our current needs and ensuring that future generations inherit a healthy planet. But amidst all these stories of conflict, tragedy, and uncertainty, it's important to take a moment to acknowledge the people who have dedicated their lives to making the world a better place. Leaders around the world are paying tribute to India's former Prime Minister, Manmohan Singh, who passed away recently.
Oh, yes.
His legacy, it's one of economic reform, political stability, and international diplomacy. He played a key role in modernizing the Indian economy and guiding the country through a period of incredible growth.
A truly remarkable leader.
It's a reminder that even in a world that can feel chaotic and unpredictable, individuals, they can make a profound difference. Their actions can inspire us, challenge us, and ultimately shape the course of history.
Their stories remind us of the power of vision, of integrity, of a dedication to service.
Yes.
And they offer hope that even in the face of adversity, we can work towards a more just, equitable, and peaceful world.
Speaking of hope, we've been on quite the emotional roller coaster today, haven't we?
We have.
We've explored stories that expose the fragility of our world,
Yes.
the complexities of human nature, and the immense challenges that we face as a global community.
It's a tapestry of light and shadow, of progress and setbacks, of despair and resilience.
Exactly. It's the story of humanity unfolding in real time.
And we're all part of it, whether we realize it or not.
It really makes you think, about the impact we have, not just through these big dramatic events, but also through those everyday actions.
Yeah.
The things we do, big or small, they all contribute to the bigger picture.
Right. It's so easy to get caught up in the headlines, the dramatic stuff that dominates the news cycle.
Right.
But we have to remember, there's so much more happening beneath the surface.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Countless individuals and communities quietly working to make a difference.
Right.
Fighting for social justice, protecting our environment, creating art that inspires, building bridges of understanding. Those are the stories that really matter.
They do. Those are the stories that need to be told, the ones that give us hope and remind us that there's good in the world.
Exactly. It's like this hidden tapestry woven with threads of hope and resilience. And it's all around us. We just have to open our eyes to see it.
It's there if we just look for it.
So I encourage everyone listening, seek out those stories. Look for the good, the hopeful, the inspiring. Talk to your neighbors. Get involved in your community. Support the organizations doing meaningful work.
That's a great point.
Because it's those acts of courage, compassion, and creativity, no matter how small they seem, that truly shape the world.
It's a good reminder that we're not just passive observers in this global drama. We're all active participants.
Exactly. We all have a role to play.
And we have the power to choose what kind of story we want to be a part of.
Even though the world can feel full of challenges, uncertainties.
Yeah.
It's also full of opportunities to make a positive difference.
It's a choice.
Don't underestimate the power of your actions, your words, your choices, no matter how small they may seem.
Well said. This deep dive has been quite the journey, to say the least.
It really has.
We have explored tragedy, conflict, political upheaval, and the ever-present fragility of our world.
We have, but we've also encountered stories of resilience, of innovation, of the enduring power of the human spirit.
And ultimately, it's those stories that give us hope.
They do. They remind us that even in the face of darkness, there's always light, there's always hope.
And that's what I want to leave you with today, a sense of hope, a sense of possibility, and that renewed commitment to engaging with the world around us. Stay curious, stay informed, keep asking those tough questions, and never underestimate your ability to make a difference no matter how small it may seem.
Because even the smallest act of kindness can ripple outwards, creating a wave of positive change.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into top global news today. We'll be back soon with more explorations into the fascinating, complex, and ever-evolving story of our world.
Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep making a difference.
And remember, there's always hope, even in the darkest of times.